I didn't get the little recording message. I was waiting for that and it never came, but I see we are recording. So not sure why I didn't get the little message. But hey, everybody, it's good to see you. As you guys know, when we're looking at Out of the Stillness right now, we're looking at things that I contemplated back in, 2012. We're probably still in 2012. Maybe soon we'll move into 2013, but quite a while ago. And I was looking at what I'm going to share next. And the interesting thing is I've had a shift recently so that what I'm going to share next no longer makes sense to me. But of course, it was perfect at one time. So I'm going to go ahead and share it. But I'm looking at that going, well, that doesn't make any sense. But let me start by sharing the shift that occurred. I'm really happy that some of y'all were in the sanctuary a little bit ago with Shauna playing these games here, there, and past, now, future, because those games might help you to understand this shift that I've just experienced. It's funny because it's something that I never even fathomed. Don't know why, never even fathomed it. And yet when it happened, I was like, oh my God, that's so obvious. Isn't that weird? It might sound a little bit crazy if I don't help you to understand it. So I'll do my best to help you to understand it. I assure you I haven't gone crazy, although even the ego would like me to buy that story. The shift only occurred about literally 25 hours ago. So it's pretty new. And in fact, I was even wondering, because I invited everybody over today, and I was even wondering if I would still be able to be with people. But it's so funny because when they showed up, everything that is with people, all the talking and all that showed up too. And I'm like, look how cool that is. It all just happened. How cool is that? Anne asked me a question about Jasmine and I was able to answer. I was actually pretty impressed with that. Doesn't sound impressive, does it? I was impressed. She asked a question, I answered just like a normal person. So let me tell you about the shift. So one thing that I've been contemplating lately, I still play games. I still play games. And some of y'all just finished the Here Now game, which is so friggin' perfect for what I'm about to share. Because what I've been contemplating lately is near, far. Now, the difference between here, there, that game, the difference between here, there, and near, far is that when you're playing the here, there game, if you play it enough, you get the sense that here is real, there is merely in the mind, right? Well, what's interesting about near, far is they're both in the mind. Neither one is real. And so it's kind of like you're contemplating and you're noticing faults, 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 but there isn't a true. You're not contemplating any truths like you are when you contemplate here, there's a true. When you're contemplating now, there's a true. When you're contemplating near, far, there is no true. So I've been playing this game, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, not very long, but pretty consistently. And yesterday, I was playing this game, and all of a sudden, I could see as clear as day that the world is a mental concept. It just friggin' blew me away. I mean, I was like, oh my God, that is so obvious. What the hell was the problem? My God. What the hell was the problem? It's so obvious. So let me see if I can explain it to you. First of all, here and now, I already said were real. That continues to be true. Here and now are real. And here and now includes everything in your experience. So here and now includes any thoughts that are crossing the mind, any emotions that are in the body, any perceptions that you see, smell, taste, touch, right? All of that is here and now. And so in that way, you can say that in a way that's all real for just this nanosecond. The only thing that is eternally real is here and now. But the fact that I'm speaking right now is not conceptual. We are all experiencing it, right? You don't have to think, oh, Regina's speaking. You hear Regina speaking, right? So that is not conceptual. That is actually happening. I'm sorry, my mind has gone a little bit crazy. It's so funny. I still have the brain, clearly, but it's like it's a little different. Like this morning, Jacqueline asked me a question about the water heater. And I'm like, can you remind me what a water heater is? I couldn't remember. It had nothing to do with my current experience is why. And what's happened is this has thrown me even more deeply into the current experience. I'm sorry, this is a stupid question. What's that country where the war is right now?
Ukraine.
Ukraine, thank you. Ukraine is a thought for each and every one of us. How many of you are in the Ukraine right now? How many of you are in a war right now? It's conceptual. You have to think about it. It doesn't exist in your current experience. Now, it doesn't sound like much, but this is incredible. This is an incredible, incredible realization when it hits, because the way that I experienced this, when I suddenly saw that the world was conceptual. Well, at first I think I was just like, like high. In fact, John, I don't know if I was weird in the store yesterday, but I was still kind of reeling. I'd only had the experience an hour and a half before. I saw Sean in this store, and I was like, I had business. Like, here, I have this and this buy. I was like, I didn't know what else to. There was no. Hi, Shauna, how are you? Or anything like that. But I'll tell you how I am experiencing this thus far, is that it's created a new focus. It's kind of like, we spend a lot of energy maybe thinking about the Ukraine, maybe thinking about politics, maybe thinking about all of this stuff that's not in the world, that is in the conceptual world, is not in our world. None of that's our business. Anything that is our business shows up in our here and now. So, I came across this a little more slowly. I can imagine that if I hadn't gone through this purification period and these many, 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 many shifts along the way, if I had just come from, where my mind was, let's say in 2005 or 2006, and popped into this realization that the world is conceptual, it would have felt like a whole bunch of crap just fell off of me. I would feel so friggin' free. For me now, it's actually just kind of a giggle, because I've let go of it's like I've done it gradually, right? So a lot of stuff has already been let go. And so it's just kind of funny. It's just kind of funny that all this time, I thought there was a world. It's funny. So I said that it created focus for me. It's a joyous focus. It's a happy focus. It's an excited focus. What I know is that whatever shows up in my here now is for me. For maybe it's something I am to do, right? It's my job to do that thing. Or maybe it's a lesson I need to learn, or whatever, but it is for me. Jacqueline's in it. She's in the kitchen go, wow. The other half of that, what you may get, Jacqueline, is that everything that does not show up in my here now is not for me. So why the hell are we wasting all this energy thinking about it and talking about it and having feelings about it? It's not mine. Now, remember, I'm going to use language, that I don't totally believe in anymore, but it's good language to communicate what I'm saying. Remember that we are all God. So I am God. As God, whatever I am to be with, deal with, whatever is going to show up for me. That is my job. Out there, all those others, God. They're all God. And they're all getting what they're to give attention to, what they're to deal with. And I can trust them 100%. I do not need to be armchair quarterbacking them. Isn't that beautiful?
Yes. It's freedom.
It's freedom. And can you see how incredible it would be to come upon this realization? Like I said, if I'd been in 2005, 2006, all this stuff would have fallen away. In my case, a lot of it had fallen away anyway. So it's just kind of funny. It's just like, oh my God, the joke's on us. It's just kind of funny. So what happens now, like I'm sitting here in Levita. So I look out and I see a mountain. And I know that, well, yeah, the mountain's for me. That's no doubt about that. My West Peak. But I know that the other side of the mountain is only conceptual.
Wow.
Right? I mean, Shauna, if I ask you what's on the other side of that mountain, you can answer me, right?
From memory.
From memory. It's not in your experience, is it? No. I mean, this is so obvious. It's so obvious. The only thing that is real is here and now. And the only thing that is for me is what's in my here and now. And only while it's in my here and now. When it's not in my here and now anymore, it's to be forgotten. Right? It's like the Tao Te Ching says, that a master does her job and then forgets about it. It's amazing. And it's so obvious. And you know what else? When I had this realization, what I remembered, and I don't know if everybody can remember this, but I can. I remembered when I decided conceptually that that there was a world when I wasn't there.
Wow.
I actually made that decision. I remember making the decision because I was in a household that was different than the household I was raised in. In the household I was raised in, we all went to bed the same time. We all got up the same time. So life pretty much didn't happen. And I never thought about it because by kids, we are naturally only in my here now, right? So I never thought about it. I mean, this was just natural, right? Life happened when I was there. That's the way it is for a kid. But I was in another household where after I went to bed, there were people up doing things. And when I got up, you could see things had been moved. There was cups left around. And I was like, oh my God, there's life when I'm not here. I literally remember that. But what I didn't see is that happened in my mind. So what would it be like if we all accept this, even if it hasn't hit you as a realization yet, if you accept this? I heard Marisol so friggin' sweet. Oh my God, Marisol. I heard Marisol the other night say, Regina would not lie to us. I'm not lying to you. So if we can all have Marisol's faith, what if we just take it on faith that the only thing that's for me, the only thing that's my business, the only thing that really needs my attention, my skills, my thoughts is my here and now? What all do you get to let go of? A lot of crap. A lot of crap. Possibly as much as 90 or 95% of what your mind thinks about. A lot of crap. Doesn't mean there isn't something to think about. Doesn't mean there isn't stuff that isn't yours to solve, right? But it means all that other stuff isn't. That belongs to, forgive the expression, the other gods. Right? That's theirs. Let them have it. It's theirs for a reason. And what's yours is yours for a reason. And you don't have to figure out the reason. You just do your job. And then when it's not in your here and now anymore, you forget about it. Now, I can see how once upon a time I would have argued with what's being said here right now. The world is not a concept. But if you play these games, you'll see that it's true. If you play the game, like I asked Shauna, what's on the other side of the mountain? She could tell, because she's been playing this game, she could tell she had to go to her mind, right? If you play these games, you're going to see that every part of the world, except for your here and now, is mental. It's mental, and it's nothing but mental. Like I said, how could I have missed this? I can't imagine, but I did until yesterday around noon. So now I look at what I'm supposed to share, and this is still from when I believed in a world. And so it's like, okay, this doesn't make any sense anymore. But I'm going to go ahead and share it from that perspective, okay? Because it was helpful to me then, so I'm sure it's helpful to someone. And this is what we're doing. We're going through this book, so we'll keep going through the book, okay? Let me just pause before I move into this and see if anybody has any questions or comments about what I just shared. George, go right ahead.
You know, Regina, last night in Roy Bedford's program, I made the comment, we're being taught that the world is an illusion by those that we respect as sages. And yet George 100% believes the world is real.
Believes, keyword, go ahead.
Believes, yes, and I understand paradox there. That's all.
That's all you have to say? Yeah, okay. Yeah, it is. I mean, like I said, you know, this is so clear to me now, but even if somebody had said it to me 48 hours ago, I don't know what the hell I would have said. Yeah, Manuela.
Well, I've had a similar shift, and all I can do is laugh, but I laugh exactly like yours, like, oh my God, this is a joke. This is so funny. How could I have ever missed it? It's so obvious. And mine came from when I read, well, I've had this big shift that I talked to you about a month ago about seeing only love. Then I read in Angelo's book, and this was, you had the word self-reflection, that changed it for you.
Yes.
What changed it for me was when I read about attention, and it said, the attention is the beam. You think it's a beam coming out of your eyes and going onto something. And I thought, yes, that's where my self-referencing is from. That's that subtle self that I think I am.
Yes,
and
yes.
It's so subtle. And so then he says, actually, on the other level of the access, on the other end, your awareness just shows up. It shows up when you hear the rain. It shows up when you see the tree. So it's exactly the same shift that you're talking about.
Yes.
But it's a different, I use different words because the rain is here now. That is here. That is me. That is my sound.
Attention is on that here now. So, I mean,
it
like
shows
all the
up.
Yes.
And then the mind wants to sort of go back and say, well, it's me looking at the rain. And then I go, no, because it's not that beam. It doesn't make sense because I'm in every single centimeter of it. There's no space. So when I hear the rain, the sound is me. That is the attention. That is me. And so it's amazing. It's so amazing. And I just can't stop laughing because it's so obvious.
Yeah,
It's like, I'll just It's amazing.
we
So
all-
sorry, I just
No,
woke
we
up
all
and
owe
I'm in bed.
Angelo, who probably doesn't even know we exist, but we all owe him a great gratitude, because I think, I'm not sure, I think that it's somewhere from him where I got the idea to contemplate near far. I'm not 100% clear on, yeah, everybody's shaking their head, yeah, you did. Okay, so I did. So, Rhoda, you want to come over here and say something?
I have a question.
Okay, come over here so everybody can hear your question.
So the question is, way back when I was contemplating attack,
Mhm.
and the question came in about, but if it's not happening in my world, is it actually happening? And there was what I thought I understood was that was ego's way of making me believe something that wasn't actually true. So I'm a little confused now, because I feel like I know, like, I've always had this sense it's not here, it's not in my world, so to
Right.
speak. But
But
does
what?
that mean it's not real?
Not for you.
Not for me.
Just leave it at that.
Okay.
As I said, it's the other gods that are dealing with it. Let the other gods deal with it.
Okay.
Okay. See, and what you have to separate here, at least this is what happened with me and my clarity yesterday. I wouldn't have known this before. You have to separate mental from actual.
Okay.
If you have to go to your mind, it's mental, it's not real. So if you have to think about, like we can think about the shooting in Tennessee 2 days ago. Mental. Now, don't get me wrong, for somebody else it may not be, but that's theirs. Let them deal with it, right?
So I can think about my son having a boxing match, but I'm not there.
It's
So it's
mental.
not real.
It's not real. It's pure mental.
Okay. So
It's
that's
all it is mental.
thank you.
Yeah. And so if we drop the things that are mental only and deal with only the actuals that show up for us, how much do you get to let go of?
Oh, that's huge.
It's huge.
Freedom.
And then you just, and then now we understand the Tao. Then you're just focusing on what shows up for you to do. That's it. This is here for me. I'm going to focus on this, right? And you're doing your, your part. But let everybody else, and this, what also was born in me in this is something that I can't explain. This all like happened at once. This incredible trust of all the other gods. And I'm just using this word because I don't know what else word to use. Like incredible trust. Everybody's getting exactly what they're supposed to get. I don't need to be concerned about them, right? Let all the other, because they're all gods. Jesus said it in the book of John. He said, you're all gods, right? That's what he said. They're all gods. They all can handle it or not right now, their choice. But I mean, there's nobody out there that isn't God. So let's do our part and let them do theirs. And trust God. When you trust God, you're not trusting some concept in the mind. You're trusting everyone and everything, just as it is. Val. Oh, and you're muted, Val.
So I'm looking at this in the sense of like, so, okay, so it's not our business if it's not right here in front of us. But then I'm trying to relate that to the concept of interbeingness. And also, so I see what's happening in Tennessee, I could say it's not my business. I don't need to take up mental space about it. But, when I think about interbeingness, I feel like I want to take up some space to like send prayer there,
Yeah.
send goodness that way, the energy of prayer.
Yeah.
And so how do you see that?
Yeah, I can talk about that. It's very, very subtle. First of all, I'm going to go back to NTI 1 Corinthians. I don't know if you've read NTI yet, Val, but NTI 1 Corinthians talks about becoming the empty shell, becoming completely empty. And it says there's only one thing you're to hold on to. Do you guys know what that is? Trust. And notice how I said what was born in me was this incredible trust of all the other gods. Trusting is different than thinking they need my help. I got to send them love. It's actually a different vibration. So the highest vibration that you can hold is just trust. Just it's trust. They got it. It's perfect. They don't need me. And sending that into the interbeing that you're talking about is the highest vibration of all, because you're seeing them as the God that they are. Right? Just, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. And if they need something from us, it will show up in our here now, right? If it's my job to do something, it'll somehow show up for me to do it. If it doesn't show up, then somebody else has got it. Anybody else? Isn't this exciting?
Yes.
It is. It's real exciting. It's real exciting. Yeah. So, and although the ego did, have a couple little murmurings, it actually wasn't as loud as you would think it would be on a shift like this. I mean, it said something like, I don't remember the exact words, but the idea was something like, you got to take the world back. You got to jump back into the mind and take it back. You can't just let it fall. You can't do that. Of course, I told you guys that there was the question there, which I'm sure was ego, is will I be able to be with people?
Mm-hmm.
And what was so funny, now you can see why when Anne asked a question about Jasmine, who isn't here, and an answer came out of my mouth, I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. Like, look, I can still talk about stuff that's not here. Like, how cool is that? I can be normal. Of course, I did have a little bit of trouble with the hot water heater. I was like, what's this? But I had just finished meditating, so. Yeah, go ahead, George.
Yeah, I don't want to take up much time, but I've come to realize everything in the world is something I believe. I believe about it. I know that 100%. It's a belief. I don't really know. However, paradoxically, I trust. I have this sense of trust that everything is exactly where it's supposed to be right now. And here and now is all that matters. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, and keep playing those games like, here, there, and past, now, future, because you'll literally get the feel of the difference between, I'm going to call it actual instead of real, actual and mental. You can feel it. Actual, mental, thought, yeah. So now that I know what I'm about to share with you is no longer true, shall we go into it? Let's look at it anyway, because it was a part of the pieces of the puzzle, right? So today we are starting with quote 232. In the 7 Steps to Awakening. Vast, whole, immutable, the self reflected in the mind's distorting mirror may appear to move. Know that it is the image moving. The true self never moves or changes. And I think this is something that most everybody in Awakening Together has done enough practice to really know the difference between the moving perception and the true self. We could call it the here now, right? The here now. I heard myself a while ago when Shauna was playing that video in the previous program where I kept asking, is it now? Is it now? Is it now? And I said, the answer is always yes, right? Because now doesn't move. Now doesn't become while ago. Now is always now, right? So, and really here and now are synonymous with true self. Here, now, they all mean the same thing. And this is what we spend a lot of time in Awakening Together tuning into. So we know that the true self doesn't move. We can experience that. And then it's everything else that dances and moves. It kind of moves through the here now, right? So that's what this quote is saying, 232. Vast, whole, immutable. The self reflected in the mind's distorting mirror may appear to move. Know that it is the image moving. The true self never moves or changes. So I'm going to now go to Out of the Stillness. Notice how mind is always moving. Watch it. It's constant movement. And most of us can, if not all of us, can attest to that, right? I mean, right this second, it may be quiet because we decided to look at it and it has a way of doing that. But as soon as you start brushing your teeth or something, what's it start doing? Starts moving, right? So notice how mind is always moving. Watch it. It's constant movement. Now look at the world. And what I know now is if you're looking at a mental concept, look at the world. Go ahead, look in your mind. That's where you're going to have to look because guess what? That's where it is. Look in your mind. Look at the world. Notice it is the same as mind, always moving and changing. Now, if you go into your mind, if you go into your memory, if you go into your experience of the news, for example, things are always moving and changing, are they not? So what this is saying is notice how the mind and the world are the same. There's a relationship between the two. Notice how mind is always moving. Watch it. It's constant movement. Look at the world. Notice it is the same as mind, always moving and changing. Now, take time to drop into the still, quiet heart. Or I could say take time to drop into presence. Look at presence for a moment. Notice its peaceful, present being. Or we could call it peaceful, present hearing, being here, hearing, or ising, or nowing. Now, for a moment, contrast that with the mind and the world. Can you see that there's a difference between the self, which is present, empty, quiet, yet alive, and the mind, which is constantly moving, and the world that is constantly moving? You know, there's a game they play on Sesame Street, at least they used to. It was called What Doesn't Belong or What's Different. Yeah, some of you guys remember that?
Is not like
Yeah,
the
one of
other.
these,
One of these things.
they can
just
sing the
doesn't
song.
belong. Yeah.
Yeah, one of these things is not like the other. One of these things just doesn't belong. So if we put the mind on that little board in Sesame Street, and we put the world on the board in Sesame Street, and we put the presence, the self, the I, which one's different? Well, they're the same as each other. So yeah, so the presence is different than them. Yes, right? So you can tell just from this contemplation, I'm not done yet, which ones are related. The mind and the world are related. They are the same. Presence is not the same. It's not related, right? You can see that. So notice how mind is always moving. Watch it. It's constant movement. Look at the world. Notice it is the same as mind, always moving and changing. Now take time to drop into the still, quiet heart. Notice its peaceful, present being. Can you see that the world is like the mind? Can you see that the world comes from mind? This is your inner being, Val. Can that relationship be noticed? Can you also see that beingness on its own is non-affected by the world or the mind. This is actually another game. In fact, I mentioned that soon I'll be quitting the awakening games. And when I do, I will probably tell people, if you want more games, just go listen to this teaching. Because guess what this teaching is? It's just filled with games. If you know how to listen for them. Right? This is another game you could spend the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks playing. Right? You just sit and you notice the mind moving. You watch the news, you notice the world moving. You notice they both shift and change. They also have other attributes. They both have guilt and blame and defense and attack, right? They're just alike. And then you notice the presence. It's not like either of them, right? And you just keep playing this game. And not only that, when you're ready, you can add a step to that game. Which one literally feels real? You can feel the realness of presence. And you can contrast that to mind or contrast that to world. And even though world may appear, mind, thoughts appear, it doesn't have that sense of reality that presence does. By playing these games, based on my experience, shifts happen. Because the games are not intellectual, the games are actual. You're doing these games are actually a type of inquiry, right? You're inquiring, and as you inquire, and I played this near far game, like I said, I don't know how long, 2 or 3 weeks. I don't know how long I was playing it. And I didn't know that, at noon yesterday, I was going to see if the world was a concept. I didn't know I was even headed in that direction. So you don't know what these games may do, how the shift may occur when you play the games. You just play the games, right? You just play them and you feel into them. Every one of these games is about feeling into the truth of it. Like this week, I posted a new game called Not Good, Not Bad Is. That's not just a mantra. If you happen to see that, that's not just a mantra. You go, not good, not bad is, and go on. You stop and you pay attention. You look at something that maybe you think is good. All my friends here, this is good. You look at it and you say, not good, not bad, is. And when you say is, if you're really paying attention, you can feel the truth in that. Good and bad don't have a truth. That's a false game. Is has a truth, and you can feel the truth in that when you say is. So these games, it's like they're contrasting the false with the true. And you get to where you start to feel what the true is, and therefore, what the false is. So let me just read 232 again, and then we'll move on to 233. Again, this is a game. Notice how mind is always moving. Watch it. It's constant movement. Look at the world. Notice it is the same as mind, always moving and changing. Now, take time to drop into the still, quiet heart. Notice its peaceful, present being. Can you see that the world is like the mind? Can you see that the world comes from mind? Can that relationship be noticed? Can you also see that beingness on its own is not affected by the world or mind? Earlier, Anne was teaching. I chose not to jump up and interrupt her, but now I'll share what I would have shared if I had jumped up and interrupted her. She was talking about yesterday when she was sick. For those of you who didn't hear the story, she felt like she was going to throw up for quite a while. Eventually she did. But she was telling the story about when she was sick, and it occurred to her mind, it arose in her mind to check and see if peace was here too. You know, and as she, you know how Anne is when she tells these stories, she's so friggin' animated. So she's talking about the ego saying this and this and this and this and this, and I'm feeling this and this and this, and then the body's doing this and this and this. And then there's this question that shows up. Is there peace here too? Is that the question? Is there peace here too? Something like that. And she checks, and there is. Even though all this is going on, even while she was vomiting, the question arose and she checked while she was vomiting. What that reminded me of was a story that I've told you before. But the story was when I got thrown from the horse. And when I got thrown from the horse and I hit the ground very, very hard out in Monument Valley, the ground is very hard there. I didn't know if I had broken my back or my neck or something. That's how much pain I was in. And what showed up in my mind while I'm laying there thrown off a horse, at that point, possibly with a broken back or neck, it showed up to check what's constant and to see if it changed. That's what showed up for me. Just like, is there peace here too, showed up for her when she was vomiting. What this reminds me of is Ramana Maharshi. Ramana Maharshi said, you know, when people asked him about, you know, should you meditate like 12 hours a day or something, which of course is very common in his culture. And in fact, he did it. So it's kind of funny because he's going to give different advice than what he did. He said, no. He said 1 or 2 hours in the morning is fine. He said, if you spend 1 or 2 hours in the morning practicing self-inquiry, the inquiry will continue on its own. You get thrown from the horse, boom. What about what's constant? Has it changed? Just happens. You're vomiting, boom. Is there peace here too? Just happens. And what that does is that starts proving to you that even when you're thrown from the horse, even when you're vomiting, the true self is unaffected. But the reason these inquiries show up, if we go back to Ramana Maharshi, the reason these inquiries show up is because we didn't wait until we were vomiting or wait until we were thrown from the horse to check. We were checking already, right? Maybe we were meditating, maybe we were playing games, but we were already doing this. I don't think it's miraculous. I think you created a little neural pathway in the brain. And that neural pathway went into action. You know, I saw a movie the other night called, I think it was called Two Hearts. And the movie started off, like I was wondering if the guy who wrote the movie studied Nisargadatta. The movie started off either everything's a miracle or nothing's a miracle. That's what Nisargadatta said, right? That's how the movie started off. Either everything's a miracle or nothing's a miracle. But then he differed. Nisargadatta said, I prefer to say that nothing's a miracle. This guy said, I prefer to say that everything's a miracle. But actually, it doesn't matter. What's matter is that it's all just occurring in exactly the way it's supposed to, right? And if we begin to inquire into reality, somehow that gets a momentum going, where even when we're thrown from the horse, even when somebody dies, even when we're vomiting, this process of checking what's real continues. Is that a miracle or not a miracle? It looks like, you know, based on Nisargadatta and this movie, you could pick either one. You could say it's a miracle or you could say it's not a miracle. It doesn't really matter. Either one is a conceptual thought, but it does happen. You know, it happens maybe just because you created that neuro connection through inquiring at other times. So it sounds like I'm preaching, Play games, right? That's what it sounds like I'm preaching. Play games. But that's what, that's what this is out of the stillness, right? That's what this is. It's the games I played. Okay, so let's go to 233. In the 7 steps to awakening. How can the dark, delusive sense of separateness affect the self, which is non-dual? It is the mind's divisive vision which sees difference. Awareness knows no separateness at all. And these games are these are the mirror games, is when we played this, if you watch the games. Right? The first mirror game was looking in the mirror, noticing all the thoughts you have about the face in the mirror, and then looking at awareness. What does awareness have to say about it? What's picking out, big nose, little nose, graying hair, wrinkles, and what's just being, it's clearly the mind. I mean, that's what this says. I'm not quite so sure I love the sages, but I'm starting to wonder why the heck we have to read what they're saying, because it's so obvious. Oh, because we're missing the obviousness of it. That's why. We need them to point out the obvious. It's obvious that the mind is the divisive mechanism. It's obvious that the mind separates and awareness doesn't. But we have to play these games to somehow really see that that's true. And we also have to play these games to see that the mind is somehow like an object and the awareness is what I am. Therefore, I don't divide. In fact, I don't believe in separation. The mind does. I, awareness, just is. So again, 233, how can the dark, delusive sense of separateness affect the self, which is non-dual? This is like Nisargadatta saying, you're looking for home and you haven't even left the house. How can the dark, delusive sense of separateness affect the self, which is non-dual? It is the mind's divisive vision which sees difference, not you. This is where the question, who am I, is so important, right? It's not you, it's the mind. It's the mind's divisive vision which sees difference. Awareness knows no separateness at all. So let's see what I did in my journal. Number 233. Look at the mind. What stories or worries or desires are found there? And you guys know what would have happened in real life when I was doing this. I didn't just write this. I probably paused right there and wrote them out on paper. And again, this is what the introduction to this book, Out of the Stillness, says, is what you don't see are the pauses, right? So I would have had another journal here where I probably would have wrote down everything I was worried about, what my desires were, what stories were in my mind. And then the next question came. Okay. So look at the mind. What stories or worries or desires are found there? They're listed. Now comes the next question. What are the different components of those stories? Who are the characters? What are the scenes and circumstances? So it's interesting because what this has me doing is writing out all these parts. Well, Anne's in this story. She was vomiting yesterday. Did she vomit downtown in Levita? Do I need to go clean it up? What are people going to think of awakening together? Right? Blah, 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 blah. Write out all these parts. Look at all these different. Oh, Val, thank you. You went and cleaned it up, right? Val's just, yeah, she says she cleaned up. No. Sorry, Anne, for picking on you. Look at the mind. What stories or worries or desires are found there? What are the different components of those stories? Who are the characters? What are the scenes and circumstances? It has me writing it all out. You get all this stuff. Then look at the next question. Go into the heart. Take time to leave the stories behind and focus on the presence of live being. Are there any parts in the heart? Can one separate character or one separate scene be found there? So if you were to do this like I did, again, you'd sit down, you'd write out all the stuff that's on your mind, who all the people are, what all the scenes are. You're going to get this massive mind map. And then now drop into presence. None of that's there. You can't say here's right presence and left presence. You can't say here's near presence and far presence. Happy presence and sad presence. None of it's there. It's just presence. Right? So go into the heart. Take time to leave the stories behind and focus on the presence of live being. Are there any parts in the heart? Can one separate character or one separate scene be found there? Of course, the answer was no. And so then the journal asks, without mind, are there parts? The answer is no. Without parts, can there be a story? No, the answer is no. Right? So what this is again pointing out is that a story is purely mental, purely mind. Doesn't matter if you're thinking about your son that's a boxer or what you're thinking about. It's mind. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to say this probably till you guys are sick of me. And even though I didn't know it until yesterday, like I know it now. You know, I mean, there's a shift. And when there's a shift, there's a shift. But anything that is mental is not real. I don't know how else to say it. So if you can see that it's mental, that it's in the mind, that true self doesn't do this, right? True self, there is no character. There is no divisiveness. I mean, I look at presence and all I see is presence, which means all of my thoughts about this and that and everything else is mental. And if it's mental, it's not true. It's just made up imaginary stuff. And what's amazing is all the suffering that causes and even all the trouble that causes. You know, I mean, we can take that word self-fulfilling prophecy. This comes to a whole new level. Because what happens is people start believing stuff in their mind, and then they believe it right into their here and now. So it causes a whole lot of trouble. I stand here now and say, without mind, there couldn't be war. It couldn't happen. War happens because people believe the mind. There couldn't be any kind of conflict between people. We make it all up, and then we believe it into our here and now. Self-fulfilling prophecy. So it's really important to notice that this story is mind, which means not real. I can let it go. If I can let it go, then it doesn't have to be believed into my here and now. So yeah, why don't you guys try 233 on your own later? Why don't you do it? You know, look at your mind, write down your stories, your worries, your desires, Write down the different components, the characters, the scenes, the circumstances. Get your mind map. Might even be fun to do it on like a great big piece of paper. So it's all on one piece of paper, right? You can just see all the different pieces. And then look at presence. No pieces. No parts. And contrast the two. And feel which one feels more real. Which one feels more I. And again, just play the games. Maybe a miracle will happen when you played a game once. Maybe a miracle will happen when you've played it for 3 weeks. Maybe a miracle happened when you played it with 2 years. You don't know. But play the games. It's called practicing inquiry. It's really just a form of inquiry. And then you might be in a car wreck one day, and you find yourself checking and noticing that you're unaffected, even while they're rushing you to the hospital. And that's the truth, right? And that changes everything. Talk about equanimity. Equanimity is not believing the mind. Yes, Anne, want to come over here? Or maybe I can just pass this to you.
I just, as you're sharing, I'm thinking about Val's point, and I'm thinking about what you just outlined, and how, for me at least, that's just a gorgeous way to pray for Nashville.
Which is, say that again.
Oh, the school shooting, the
No,
school
I
shooting.
know what that is,
Oh,
but I mean,
this-
this is a gorgeous way to pray.
This mind, what's the story?
Oh, yeah.
What's going on? What are the different parts? I mean, lay it out, like not pretending it's not here.
Right,
There's not judgment, the good, bad, them, this, guns, Congress, everything.
boy, that's a big mind. You need a big piece of paper for that
All
one.
of it, all of it. And then compare that to presence.
Right.
And see which one you want to give
Your attention
more
to.
presence to,
Yeah.
as a, as an offering, as a truth, as an embodied prayer.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. So fun being all together here. I invited them over for live sanctuary. Oh, Ruby, I see your hand. Do you want to say something? We got like a minute.
I hope I can say it in a minute. But I'm in Switzerland visiting a dear friend, and I went to this restaurant alone. Oh, I'll see if I can say it. And it's really, so I went to this restaurant alone, and I was having my tea and my little cookie or whatever. And so this family comes in, this guy and it's going to be quick. It's really a quick story. This guy with 2 boys. So they sit down, and I started thinking, oh, who is that, his friend? Or that's the father? And I was having this game with myself. Then the mother comes in. I don't know if it was a mother or not. Could have been anybody. Comes in and joins him. I said, oh, that's the mother, and that. So I had this story, but I had inner Ramana. So I said, oh no, I'm supposed to be inquiring. So I stopped that, and I said, well, be here. Well, first of all, I said, what is present now? And then that's what I meditate. And I said, well, I can look and go to no land, and I can't do that here. So I said, be here now. So that was in my mind. Be here now. Well, first of all, I understood that I was creating the story with this family, and I'm supposed to be watching my mind, and I watched my mind, and I got it really fast. So I said, be here now. And I was looking out the window, because they have big windows, and there was no, when you're being here now, there was no labels. You're looking at this tree, you're just looking at it. And you're
Yes.
seeing the beauty without not saying it's beautiful. You're looking at the tree and the whatever, and the people walking by. You don't say those are people. You're just looking at them. And everything, you're including everything. So that was my experience. So this is very, very good what you're saying to me.
Yeah, that's
Because but the other thing I want to say, one other thing, is I was curious about what if I was having a conversation? How could you be there now and have a conversation with somebody? I'm just sitting up there looking at people who are not people. They're just, you can see that they're people, but you're not labeling them because
Yeah,
you're being here now.
You just keep practicing and it'll happen. You'll find the conversation just happens. Just like today.
Oh,
you
okay.
asked the question and the answer just came. So you'll find that you
Okay,
don't-
that's
you
interesting.
don't have to shift back into believing for a conversation to happen. It'll happen anyway.
Okay,
All right, we
thank
gotta
you. That
go.
was lovely.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.